there, and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time, welcome. I hope you will enjoy the video currently showing, and please leave your comments below after viewing. If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe to my channel, for there will be more videos to come. And thank you for your interest. Hello again, and welcome to our exploration of the Glencoe Village. In this video, we will travel to Glencoe and explore some of the beautiful scenery surrounding the village of Glencoe. We will also be looking into some of the history about this place, as well as some of the activities available for visitors of Glencoe. Welcome to Glencoe, Scotland. Glencoe is perhaps Scotland's most famous and scenic glen. It's also arguably Scotland's most historic. It was recently voted as Scotland's most romantic glen. Glencoe is not only a holiday centre for hill walking and mountaineering, it is also an ideal base from which to explore the Highlands of Scotland. A guide to Glencoe, Scotland provides you with information on a range of accommodation available in the area, along with some ideas about the things you can see and do as you holiday in Glencoe. Glencoe is a village in western Scotland. It lies in steep-sided Glencoe Valley, in the Scottish Highlands. The village lies at the foot of Glencoe, where the River Coe flows into Loch Leven. The original settlement here was at Invercoe, on the north bank of the river. This was one of the scattered villages of the MacDonalds at the time of the Glencoe Massacre in 1692. area is known for waterfalls and trails that climb peaks such as the Bukal Etib Mor and the Bidian Nam Bian. By the mid-1700s, there was a ferry operating across Loch Leven, from Invercoe to Callet House on the north shore. From there, a path led across the shoulder of Mam Nar Gulin, at a height of 1,560 feet before dropping to the line of the old military road, from what is now Kinlochleven to Fort William. This route today is used by the West Highland Way. On the south shore, the ferry connected to a road which followed the north bank of the River Coe, up the Glencoe to King's House on the edge of Rannochmore. The lower parts of this road remain in use, as far as a junction with the A82, which is a mile east of the Clackaig Inn, and provides a very scenic single-track alternative route in and out of the village. By 1850 the settlement at the mouth of the River Coe was generally known as Glencoe, and by now the larger part was on the south side of the River Coe, close to the point where the river was crossed by the Bridge of Coe. The more easterly of two bridges built within a third of a mile of one another in the late 1700s. Meanwhile, steamers from Glasgow had begun to call at the pier here. In the 1930s a new road along Glencoe was built along the south side of the river, in the lower Glen bypassing Glencoe. This process was effectively completed when the Ballachulish ferry was replaced by the Ballachulish Bridge in 1975. The drivers were no longer diverted through Glencoe, around the head of Loch Leven at Kinlochleven. This was to avoid the ferry queues. Glencoe's response was to spread towards the new main road, and the Glencoe Hotel was built in 1939 on what is now the A82. Opposite it is the headquarters of Glencoe Mountain Rescue. This attractive white herald building carries a plaque dedicated to the memory of Graham Flatters, from 1957 to 1996, who apparently loved to wander in wild places. What you find in Glencoe today is a main settlement stretching from the A82, along the shore of Loch Leven to the northeast. The single main street of the village is home to the village shop, and a little further along on the opposite side is the post office. There is also a village hall and St. Mary's Church. The houses range from traditional cottages through to more modern constructions, taking in more utilitarian designs en route. Perhaps the most striking of the domestic buildings are the two thatched 18th century croft houses, which now accommodate the excellent Glencoe and North Lawn Folk Museum, with displays on local heritage, and the Glencoe Massacre of 1692. With wildlife in the area that includes red deer and golden eagles. At the northeast end of the main street is the bridge over the River Coe, nearby the War Memorial. There's a road leading along the south bank of the river past the cottages, takes you the short walk to the Massacre monument, commemorating the Glencoe Massacre. The old road along the north bank of the river follows the lower slopes of Scorner Quay, the Pap of Glencoe, and brings you first to the Glencoe Youth Hostel, and then to the Clackaig Inn, a well-known provider of food, drink, and accommodation to generations of climbers and travellers. East of the Clackaig Inn is where the old road meets the A82. Near to this junction stood the National Trust for Scotland Visitor Centre, until demolished in 2002. Its larger and more environmentally sensitive replacement lies to the southwest of the A82, which is nearer to the village. History of Glencoe. The first historical figure connected with Glencoe was Fingal, one of the greatest Celtic heroes, and leader of the Feen. He was a warrior of Gaelic mythology. The Glen was his legendary home, and his memory is preserved in a number of place names, for example Scornham Finidi, which means Rock of the Feen. Fingal's poet's son Ossian is also remembered by the naming of the cave above the Loch Actriuachtan. Assuming that he was a real person at all, the legendary Fingal is credited with the ultimate defeat of the Viking invader, King Eirigan of Sora. Fingal was said to have defeated the Viking leader Eirigan of Sora, but the Viking influence could not be held at bay for long. The descendants of Eirigan became the MacDougall clan, and the MacDougals held control over Glencoe from the 11th century onwards. Over the next 2 centuries, the MacDougals managed to build up a small empire in western Scotland. However, this was all to collapse in 1308, when they sided in favour of Balliol against Robert the Bruce. In a gesture of thanks for his support during this conflict, Robert the Bruce gifted Glencoe to Angus Og, the then clan chief of the MacDonalds. Angus Og subsequently left Glencoe to his bastard son Ian Frerk, who founded the ill-fated clan Mac-Ian Abrach of Glencoe. There then followed a period of relative calm until the year 1501, when disputes flared up between the Glencoe MacDonalds and the neighbouring Argyll Campbells. The sources of the conflict were the continued raiding and cattle rustling. On behalf of the MacDonalds and the attempts by the Campbells to extend their territory, these troubles rumbled on into the middle of the 17th century, and into the period of Scotland's involvement in the Scottish Wars of the Covenant. During which the MacDonalds and the Campbells found themselves on different sides. The MacDonalds were forever associated with royalist and rebel causes, whilst the Campbells became increasingly involved with the authority of government. In reality, it was a tragic battle between 2 very different ways of life, the carefree and somewhat lawless Highlanders, and the ruthless central government. The centuries-long conflict came to head in one of the most infamous episodes in Scottish history, the Glencoe Massacre. The Glencoe Massacre. The background. From the Caledonians and the Picts rejecting the Romans in the first few centuries AD, to William Wallace and Robert the Bruce warring with the English army at Stirling and Bannockburn. The fight for independence is a long-standing theme in Scotland's history. The Jacobite cause began in the late 17th century, after the Stuart King James VII of Scotland and II of England was overthrown by William of Orange, who later became William III. During the Glorious Revolution of 1688, King James fled to France, but his supporters in Scotland, known as the Jacobites, rose up and tried to restore a Catholic king to the throne. The MacDonalds and the Campbells, the two Highland clans at the centre of the Glencoe Massacre, had a history of feuding. Their lineages are interwoven, with both clans having long histories, linked to Robert the Bruce and the fight for independence. As they each grew more powerful, they wrestled for dominance and titles, often raiding each other's land when the opportunity arose. They were also known for stealing cattle from each other. They both had opposing political views, with the MacDonalds supporting the deposed King James, and although it's the Campbells who are most associated with the massacre of the MacDonalds, it was less of an issue of clan rivalry than a plot by the government to bring Highland clans into line behind King William. The Oath of Allegiance. Despite the first Jacobite risings that mostly resulted in defeat for the Highlanders, William III wanted to pacify any clans sworn to King James, involving his claim to the throne, including the Glencoe MacDonalds. William demanded that all the clans sign an oath of allegiance to him, initially with the promise of giving them money together with land. Any clan signing the oath before the 1st of January of 1692 would be pardoned, while anyone who refused would be punished as traitors. One of the problems for the clans was that they were already bound by an oath to King James, as he only gave his consent to this request from William in mid-December. News had only reached the MacDonalds on the 28th of December, where they only had 3 days to meet the deadline. The chief of the Glencoe MacDonalds, Clan Macian, set out to Fort William. But there was no one there who could take his oath, meaning he had to go to Inverary, which was 60 miles away. He arrived late, but was eventually allowed to take the oath on the 6th of January. He believed it had been accepted and his clan was safe, but the decision to make an example of them had already been made. Glencoe's fate was sealed forever. It's known that Lord Dalrymple and others in the government disliked the Highlanders and the MacDonalds in particular. Some may have argued that this was their intention all along. The Massacre. The final chapter in this tragedy began on the 27th of August, 1691, when King William III in London offered a pardon to all Highland clans who fought against him or raided their neighbours, but it was on the condition that they took the oath of allegiance before a magistrate by the 1st of January, 1692. The alternative for failing to comply was death. The MacDonald clan chief, Macian of Glencoe, reluctantly agreed to take the oath, but mistakenly travelled to Inverlochie, in Fort William, instead of Inverary near Oban. He finally reached Inverary on January the 6th, but this was unfortunately after the deadline. MacDonald believed that despite this delay in taking the oath, he and the clan MacDonald were now safe. But unknown to him, a force was already assembled at Inverary, and given orders to exterminate the whole clan. The force left for Glencoe on the 1st of February, led by Captain Robert Campbell of Glen Lyon, who was a man with a grudge against the MacDonalds. Two companies totaling around 120 men from the Earl of Argyll's regiment, and led by Captain Robert Campbell of Glen Lyon, finally arrived in Glencoe in late January. The two companies of around 120 men were provided with bed and board by the MacDonalds for almost 2 weeks. Hospitality like this was traditional in the Highlands, although in reality, the villagers had little choice. Then, on the evening of the 12th of February, 1692, Glen Lyon and the other officers received orders to destroy the MacDonald clan. The orders received went as follows: "You are hereby ordered to fall upon the rebels, the MacDonalds of Glencoe, and put all to the sword under the age of 70. At 5 a.m. the following morning, Glen Lyon's men were given the signal and attacked. The first man killed was Massacre before the attackers went up and down the glen, killing anyone under the age of 70, including women and children. It seems likely that some of the soldiers alerted the families, giving some of them a chance to escape. However, 38 men and women along with children were killed in the attack, and many more died of exposure whilst evading the onslaught, later succumbing to the harsh weather and freezing winter conditions in the mountains. The aftermath. When news of the massacre eventually reached the wider public, having first been published in France, a Scottish parliamentary commission of inquiry determined that the killings were murder under trust. At the time when hospitality was a cornerstone of the Highlanders' way of life, this was a shocking and terrible crime. The Glencoe massacre damaged William III's reputation, although he was absolved of any wrongdoing. But many of the instigators of the crime, like Lord Dalrymple, managed to avoid any real repercussions. Much of the blame was laid at the feet of Clan Campbell, when in fact only a dozen or so Campbells were involved. The monument. The monument to the fallen MacDonalds is situated in the Glencoe Village. Clan Massacre was buried on the island of Eilean Monday in Loch Leven. Signal Rock, where the order was given to begin the massacre, stands just a few hundred yards west of the Clackaig Inn, on the north bank of the River Coe. Shortly after this period, a new military road was built, passing the eastern end of Glencoe, and in 1785, the first road was built through the glen itself. As with so many places within the Highlands, the clearances took their toll, and by the death of the 17th chief, Ewan MacDonald in 1837, the chieftainship of the MacDonalds had little meaning. Ownership passed through several hands during the next century. Then, in 1935, to prevent possible commercial exploitation, the National Trust for Scotland bought 12,800 acres of the glen. With the help of donations from a variety of sources, the Trust's holding has been extended over the years and today covers most of the glen, from the edge of Rannoch Moor to the shores of Loch Leven. geography of Glencoe. Upon arriving at Glencoe, the first view for most people will be the dominating and impressive peak of Buccal Etive Moor. It rises to over 1,000 feet over the great wilderness of Rannoch, before slowly descending through the glen itself. Before reaching the Buccal, you will spot Scotland's original ski area at White Corries overlooking the moor. The popular long-distance path, known as the West Highland Way, starts beneath the chairlift from the Black Mount before crossing over toward the Devil's Staircase, which meanders all the way to Fort William. The Glen of Glencoe runs in an east to west direction, with steep-sided mountains on both sides. To the north is the Ernick Agach Ridge, a precipitous and craggy knife edge, which is a challenging day out, even for experienced mountaineers. To the south, a whole series of peaks dominate the skyline. After the Big Buccal, there's the little one, Buccal Etive Beg, and also the Three Sisters of Glencoe, which is what the ridges of Ben Adder, Gira Ernick and Ernick Dhu are collectively known as. It's only a short distance along to the small village of Glencoe, which is overlooked by the impressively shaped Pap of Glencoe. The modestly sized village provides the visitor with a wide range of facilities, from bed and breakfast accommodation, restaurant and cafes, petrol station, post office, and shop. There's also a very good but quite small museum, and some excellent gentle walks around the Glencoe Lochen, which was formerly the Strathcona House and Estate. Today, much of the glen is owned by the National Trust of Scotland. The Glencoe weather. The region has an oceanic climate, with typically warm rather than hot summers and cool to cold winters. The Scottish Highlands do get periods of cold, snowy and extreme weather, however for the majority of the time the Highlands can be visited throughout the year. On average, the hottest month is July in summer, and the coldest is January in winter. Rainfall on average falls fairly evenly throughout the year. February is the driest month, with September being the wettest. Weather in the Highlands is often unpredictable, as it is with the rest of the UK, and it is possible to see elements of all 4 seasons in one day. The region does experience snowfall in the winter, as it can be heavy at times. It is advisable for visitors to check the weather forecast before they arrive in the Scottish Highlands, providing a better idea of the sort of clothing they will need during their trip. Bringing hooded, warm, waterproof coats and hats will ensure visitors are ready for spells of wind and rain during your visit. The Devil's Staircase. The Devil's Staircase was initially given its name by the soldiers who were part of the road-building program of General Wade. The carrying of building materials up that stretch of the road was not popular. The name was perpetuated when some of the workers building the Blackwater Dam chose to travel to the nearest pub after their wages had been paid out. For the workers at Kinlochleven, the journey to the King's House Hotel proved to be more difficult than many realized. The journey back was even worse, as unsteady legs meant many were unable to manage the return trip, and on a cold winter's night, the devil often claimed his own. There's a signpost at Alton Fay, indicating the West Highland Way over to Kinlochleven. The path is very clear and soon rises above the plain of Rannochmore. The path zigzags as it climbs the steepest part, at which point the views of the moor and of the mountains surrounding it are well worth taking in. The path continues down, crosses the burn using stepping stones, and then starts slowly upwards again. To the right, the Blackwater Reservoir comes into view. Built for the aluminium smelter at Kinlochleven, the dam had a capability, when full, of running the smelter for 80 days. The path continues downwards until it reaches the dam road, at the pumping station where the pipes to the smelter start the high-pressure build-up for the turbines in the generating station. Still very steep, the path continues down to Kinlochleven across the river, through a small section of woods to the tail race where the water rushes out of the generating station. Whilst planning your journey, here's a handful of useful resources. For planning your journey to Glencoe, and for travelling around when you get there. 1. Traveline is a useful resource for planning any travel by public transport around the UK. 2. Use Trainline to book your train or coach from anywhere in Europe to Fort William, where you can then jump on a local Shield bus to Glencoe. 3. Traffic Scotland, which provides up-to-date road information across Scotland. 4. You can travel with Scottish City Link coaches to Glencoe, with good connections to and from Glasgow. 5. Shield buses, for more local bus services such as Glencoe, Fort William and Kinlochleven. There are also National Express and National Bus and coach timetables. There is also the ScotRail, where you can let the train take the strain, though the nearest stations are either Bridge of Orchy or Fort William. Grabbing yourself a map of Glencoe, like the Harvey's Maps, will help you get about the area. Local taxi companies are also available 24 hours a day and night. The mountains. The mountains of Glencoe are built from some of the oldest sedimentary and volcanic strata in the world. They were subsequently molded, sheared, and repositioned by a geological event known as a cauldron subsidence, which took place around 380 million years ago. The effects of glaciation and millions of years and many cycles of erosion have subsequently carved and worn the rocks away into the formation we know today. Glencoe is bounded on its northern side by the famous Ernach Egach, a pinnacled ridge, linking three peaks over 3,000 feet, which stretches for over 3 miles. It's the narrowest ridge on the UK mainland. In contrast, the Glen's southern flanks are a complex assemblage of peaks and ridges and valleys, which rise up above the peat hags and scattered lochans of Rannoch Moor, then extend to the shores of Loch Leven, which are some 10 miles distant. The mountains, which first greet the visitor arriving from the south, are the strikingly beautiful and instantly recognizable peaks of the Buccal Etive Moor and Buccal Etive Beg with the great herdsman of Etive. Magnificent though they may be, but neither of these mountains are the reigning peak of the Glen or the district. That distinction belongs to the peak of Bidian Nambian, whose main summit is hidden above and behind its more famous outliers, three great truncated spurs known as the Three Sisters of Glencoe. The waters which tumble from these high mountains and give rise to a series of spectacular waterfalls gather initially at the meeting of the Three Waters to form the River Coe. Less than a mile lower down, at the very heart of Glencoe, the river widens briefly to form the sombre yet beautifully situated Loch Actriuchtan, a superb place from which to view the entire glen. Beyond the river, which passes through a further series of rocky channels and open pools, to reach Loch Leven near the tiny village of Glencoe itself. Lochaber Geopark Association has been established to raise awareness of Lochaber's outstanding geology and geomorphology, of which Glencoe plays a key part. Lochaber has recently achieved international recognition as a European geopark. Mountaineering in Glencoe. Glencoe has been the home of Scottish mountaineering for a century and a half. More than 150,000 mountaineers visit Glencoe every year to tackle the rugged terrain whilst making the most of the huge diversity of climbs and get the ultimate view of the dramatic landscape below. Glencoe is still at the forefront of the sport, with some of the hardest winter and summer routes in Britain. There are many new routes yet to be climbed, with new skills and technologies opening up the mountains even more as the years go by. The best Glencoe climbing routes. Glencoe is a magnet for walkers and hikers of all abilities, but certain routes are strictly for experienced mountaineers and climbers. The Buchel Etive is a well-known ridge consisting of a number of peaks. The Munro Stob Jarrig is the highest summit on the ridge and offers various climbing routes like Crowberry Ridge and Curved Ridge, which is one of the more popular scrambling routes on the mountain. The Ernach Egach Ridge stretches 5.5 miles from the Devil's Staircase in the east to the Pap of Glencoe in the west, and includes two Munros, Scorn Infinity, and Yell Jarrig. In winter conditions, this is one of the most challenging climbs you'll find. The Bidian Nambian, the highest peak in Argyll and Glencoe's remotest crag, takes in the famous Three Sisters and has lots of opportunities for rock climbing and ice climbing. Notable routes include the Church Door Buttress, the Diamond Buttress, and Broad Gully. The Mountain Rescue in Glencoe, Scotland. Operating from the rescue centre in Glencoe Village, the Glencoe Mountain Rescue Team is one of the busiest and the longest established team in Scotland, with a typical 60 to 70 call-outs every year. The Glencoe Mountain Rescue Team cover a wide geographical area from Rannoch Moor to the Etive Hills, to the Mamors and over into Morven and Ardnamurchan. The team is made up of dedicated and highly experienced unpaid volunteers who operate 24 hours per day, 365 days per year, in what are at times extremely harsh and unforgiving conditions. Despite the fact that the team members are unpaid volunteers, it still costs thousands of pounds every year for the team to operate. A very small part of this funding comes from the Scottish executive. However, the bulk of the funding comes from fundraising and donations. The running costs of the team run into tens of thousands of pounds each year, and without these donations, the team simply wouldn't be able to operate at the current level. Donations provide the necessary funds for Scotland's mountain rescue teams. The Clachaig Inn has for decades been associated with Scottish mountaineering and the Glencoe Mountain Rescue Team. The team was formed by Hamish McInnes at a meeting in the bar at Clachaig in 1962, and over the years since, the Clachaig management and staff have contributed to the numbers in the team, from Rory MacDonald through to Ed Danes, who is one of the current directors. Things to see and do in Glencoe. Glencoe is world-renowned as a centre for mountaineering and hill walking. But it is also the ideal location in which to relax or to use as a convenient base to tour the Western Highlands of Scotland. The village of Glencoe lies to the western edge of the glen, and then a mile further west of this is Ballachulish. Both of these locations have facilities for visitors passing through, as well as options for accommodation. At the western edge of the glen can be found a visitors' centre, packed full of information on local activities and footpaths. It's easy to explore the area on foot, or you can use local buses or taxis to go further. If you don't have your own transport, you could hire a car and explore further afield. There are many activities to enjoy and explore whilst visiting in Glencoe. There is also a development of the West Highland Way. A long-distance trail has led to an increase in the number of walkers over recent years. The trail follows the route of the old military road over Rannoch Moor and descends the glen along the Devil's Staircase. Discover Glencoe's rich history. Set within traditional 19th century heather-thatched cottages, Glencoe Folk Museum holds an eclectic array of objects celebrating local heritage and providing an insight into the history of the area and its people. Glencoe Folk Museum is proud to be founded, run and supported by women. With no building and no collection, they had a lot of work to do. Money was raised through ceilidh dances and bake sales. They secured a small cottage within the Glencoe Village, and donations of objects from the local community began to trickle in. The collection quickly outgrew the original museum building, and in 1971 the museum was gifted its current home by the late Hugh Grant. Not the actor Hugh Grant. The museum opened its doors in 1972, and the unique and eclectic collection of objects has continued to grow. Barbara Fairweather was passionate about preserving the history of the area and sharing the Glencoe Village heritage with others, and this is still very much at the heart of what they do. The cottages. The main museum building was originally two separate cottages, which have been dated to the early 1700s. The western building is the older of the two, and is what is known as a crock cottage. This term is used when the bearing beams of the roof come down the inside walls instead of resting on the side walls. The low doors and thick walls are typical of buildings of this period. Built for warmth and security, the buildings are believed to have been inhabited right up until the 1950s. But by the time the museum acquired them, they had become derelict and were due to be demolished. In fact, in order to secure the thatched croft cottages for future generations to enjoy, Ray Grant stood in front of a bulldozer to prevent their demolition. They were restored in 1972. Every effort was made to retain the style of the original construction, so the cottage has been rethatched with heather, which would have traditionally been used in this area. The Massacre of Glencoe. Converted into a typical MacDonald cottage on the night of the infamous massacre, the Old Dairy, or Massacre Room, gives the most in-depth information in the area about the infamous massacre of Glencoe. Take a peek inside as the family settles in for the night, and listen as the haunting audio explains what happened on the 13th of February, 1692.
It is late evening on the 12th of February 1692. Outside a storm is brewing, with each gust of wind picking up strength and dark snow-laden clouds swirling around the mountains. Inside the stone cottage, the Highland family are snug cool. They required oath of allegiance to King William some 6 weeks before. They now have nothing to fear from the King's soldiers. They have also been given good reason to extend hospitality to the soldiers, having been told the garrison at Fort William was overcrowded and could not accommodate more troops.
Fall upon the rebels and put all males under 70 to the sword. In effect, he has to turn on the man who has befriended him.
The Massacre of Glencoe, or Mert Glencoe, meaning the murder of Glencoe, was an unprecedented act of treachery and grave breach of Highland hospitality. In the early hours of the morning on the 13th of February, 1692, soldiers who had for almost a fortnight shared the MacDonald's homes, tables and company, who turned on their hosts. 120 government soldiers, under the command of Robert Campbell of Glenlyon, were billeted to stay with the MacDonalds, under the pretext of collecting arrears of taxes from the local area. Once there, they were told to await further orders. The MacDonalds welcomed these men into their homes, giving them free lodgings throughout the glen, feeding them from their own scant winter supplies, and sharing drinks with them. Then, on the night of the 12th of February, Glenlyon received his true orders. You are hereby ordered to fall upon the rebels, the MacDonalds of Glencoe, and put all to the sword under 70. You are to have a special care that the old fox and his sons do upon no account escape your hands. You are to secure all the avenues that no man escapes. This order came by the king's special command, and assured Campbell that he could expect to be dealt with as one being not true to king, nor government if he didn't obey. The massacre began simultaneously in 3 settlements, Invercoe, Inverrigan, and Achnacan, though the killing took place all over the glen as the fleeing MacDonalds were pursued. Men were dragged from their beds and murdered, houses were torched, and women with children and the very elderly were cast out into the snow. "38 MacDonalds were murdered outright, including Clan MacIan, who was the chief of the MacDonalds, and countless more perished in the mountains." The Massacre Room explores the reasons behind this brutal act of betrayal, and looks at the characters involved. Barb's Highland Heritage Book. If you pop into the little museum, you may notice that there is a selection of pamphlets available in the gift shop, which are purchased regularly by visitors and make for a quick but informative read. You can also buy a book titled Highland Heritage, where one can be viewed on display in an exhibit that explains the founding of the museum. What's that book doing behind glass in a museum, you might wonder? Well, these are no ordinary reading materials. These are quite unique and special to the museum because one of the founders and the first curator researched and wrote them. The Highland Heritage is a book written by Barbara Fairweather and published through Glencoe and North Lawn Folk Museum. This was the name given to the museum at that time. It was first published in 1984 and printed locally by Neversprint Limited in Fort William. Brothers in Arms. Memorial plaques, or dead man's pennies as they were often known, were presented to the next of kin of soldiers who were killed in the First World War. They contain only the soldier's name, no rank, regiment or service number is included, so that the soldiers would remain equal in death. However, this can make it difficult to match the plaque to any one particular soldier, particularly if they have a common name. The plaques were donated to the museum in 2015, after being discovered in the attic of a house in Glencoe. Clan Donald genealogical tree. The Clan Donald genealogical tree is one of the museum's most exciting objects, compiled in 1814 by John Brown, genealogist. It charts the descent of various branches of Clan Donald from the 10th century onwards. This beautiful chart was damaged in 1984 when an arsonist set fire to the museum roof, but was later restored thanks to a grant from the Gordon Fraser Charitable Trust. The museum collection. The museum has a unique array of objects including Jacobite relics, costumes, paintings, classic toys, photographs and domestic items from around the Glencoe area, as well as medals, uniform and memorabilia from the First and Second World Wars. Each object tells its own fascinating story. How did Robert Campbell lose his boot? Why were swords hidden in thatched roofs after the Battle of Culloden? What was the common cure for faintness of spirit? And what was a Plunkett roller? Highland threads. Highland Threads is a virtual exhibition showcasing items of costume from 14 museums across the Highlands. Alongside stories of the people who made them and wore them, as well as their beautiful 1740s Spitalfields dress. The exhibition includes a knitted bathing suit, a fisherman's gancy, military uniform, gearlock pattern stockings and even a waistcoat belonging to Bonnie Prince Charlie. This fantastic exhibition was funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund and produced by Museums and the Heritage Highland, a network organization. Working with heritage organizations across the region to collaborate and innovate for a more sustainable future, Nicola Henderson, who is the Museums and Heritage Highlands Digital Innovation and Network Manager, had said, The idea for Highland Threads was conceived at a Highland Heritage Cafe, a regular online meet-up for people working in heritage, where they saw an opportunity to support each other, while the museum struggled through temporary closure due to COVID-19 restrictions. Glencoe Folk Museum's redevelopment. The exciting major redevelopment will be the first since the museum moved into its current premises over 50 years ago. The project has been developing since 2019, with extensive consultations among the community, local businesses and other museums with the local authorities. The objective is to overhaul the museum site, balancing the much-loved charm of the current attraction with a modern fit-for-purpose space in which to share the rich history of Glencoe with visitors. This project will protect and enhance the historic structures, while working to secure the environmental and financial sustainability, ensuring the museum continues to be a tremendous local asset for the next 50 years and beyond. Live and work in Glencoe. If you're looking to escape the rat race, then there must be few better places to live and work than in the Highlands of Scotland. Although employment opportunities tend to be more limited by the smaller population, there are still plenty job opportunities. The Clackagan is one of the largest employers in the Glencoe area, with up to 55 staff being employed between the business outlets in Glencoe and Fort William. Most of these positions are offered on a full-time year-round basis, though some may prefer seasonal job opportunities. Chefs and catering jobs, plus bar work with waiting and housekeeping positions, are all offered, in addition to a number working in reception with admin and marketing. Some live-in accommodation tied to the jobs is also available. Further rented accommodation can usually be found in the nearby villages of Glencoe, Ballachulish, and Kinlochleven. Water sports. Glencoe is famous for its mountains, but there's plenty of water too. The River Etive is a favorite with more experienced paddlers, whereas the River Coe draws increasing numbers of boats too. However, a paddle in a kayak on Loch Leven in the summer sun tends to have a wider appeal. Other activities to do on the River Etive include canoeing, coast-steering, whitewater rafting, snorkeling, sea trekking and fun yaking, and also rugged coast paddle, board and e-foil. With the rugged coast, you will learn everything to paddle an e-foil in a safe, progressive way, from the Loch experiences through to the Grand Tour on Loch Leven and beyond. You can also see the Jacobite steam train from the water as you glide around on your paddleboard. stunning views of Ben Nevis on the Fort William trip, as the steam train crosses the Glenfinnan Viaduct, made famous by the Harry Potter films. Trek Scotland, based in Fort William, allows you to explore the coast like never before, with snorkeling, coast-steering, or sea trekking adventures. Vertical descents. If you like dressing up in rubber, then Angry-based vertical descents might very well appeal to you. Exhilarating water-based activities including canoeing and coast-steering, with whitewater rafting, river bugging and fun yaking. All the equipment you will need is provided along with professional guides, and the activities are based at multiple locations, both within the local area and also slightly further afield. Equally popular with both family groups and stag parties, vertical descents offer a great opportunity to try some of these activities out. Accommodation in Glencoe and Ballachulish. Glencoe offers a wide variety of accommodation for all visitors of all budgets, from bed and breakfast accommodation in award-winning inns to chalets, lodges and cottages, providing accommodation in a variety of mountains, villages and lochside settings. Whether you're looking for bed and breakfast accommodation at a world-famous Highland Inn, a mountain chalet with the most stunning views of Scotland's most famous glen, or a contemporary family home for a relaxing holiday, there are plenty of options to choose from. Here are some to start off with. Located in the Glencoe Lochside communities, the properties are popular due to their proximity to the water and the fantastic views out over the loch, and to the mountains beyond. Where the glen meets the sea loch, you'll find the sprawling communities that make up the wider Glencoe Village. It's an idyllic location with the Glencoe Mountains as a backdrop with views over spectacular Loch Leven to the Burial Isle, and the hills of Ballachulish, with Ardgour and Callet. Choose between two cottages in these Glencoe Lochside locations. Camus Van is a well-presented family home, sleeping up to 7 guests in 3 bedrooms, 2 of which benefit from ensuite facilities, with walks from the back door to the scenic Glencoe Lochen, and views to the front straight out over the loch. The cottage is the epitome of the perfect holiday location. Irivoni, Lochside Cottage, is a converted former croft house, and is popular with couples looking for a holiday retreat. The house accommodates 4 comfortably in 2 good-sized bedrooms. Clackaig Inn of Glencoe. Nestling in the very heart of Glencoe, amongst the spectacular and majestic mountains of the Scottish Highlands, Clackaig Inn has been a source of accommodation and hospitality for travellers for over 300 years. The hotel has 23 fully modernized bedrooms with ensuite facilities. The accommodation offers a choice of double twin and family rooms. All bedrooms have shower and toilet facilities, and some including a bath as well. Many of the bedrooms enjoy magnificent views from the Glencoe Mountains, and all are designated non-smoking. 5 of the Glencoe View rooms are dog-friendly, but these rooms can only be booked directly through reception. Please read the dog policy first before booking. A legendary source of Highland hospitality, any stay at the Clackaig Inn is characterized by the lively atmosphere of the bars, which have won several national awards due to unbeatable mix of traditional cask ales, numerous malt whiskies, Scottish distilled gins with excellent food and regular live music, plus the occasional seasonal beer festival. The Clackaig of Glencoe provides modern comfortable accommodation, which is complemented with a traditional hearty Scottish breakfast, which is a really great way to start the day. Quarry Cottages of Ballachulish. With Glencoe just along the road, Oban to the south and Fort William to the north. Quarry Cottages are a great base for exploring the West Highlands. Quarry Cottages of Ballachulish take their name from the once world-famous Ballachulish slate quarry. These cottages enjoy open views across the Shinty Park and a stunning mountain backdrop in an ideal village location. Comfort and convenience come as standard, with the Co-op supermarket, pub and restaurant and a fish and chip shop. And not forgetting the coffee shop, all just minutes away, with gentle walks through the old quarry and along the loch foreshore. The Riverbank Holiday Cottages in Glencoe. Riverbank Holiday Cottages in Glencoe comprises of 3 individual cottages located in a unique and picturesque setting on the bank of the River Coe. The cottages are in an excellent location, private and yet close to Glencoe Village. with the MacDonald Monument erected in memory of the infamous massacre of Glencoe. The cottages sleep between 4 and 6 guests and are a great location for a family holiday. After exploring, you can return to the calm banks of the river to enjoy some downtime as you watch the ducks pass by on the River Coe. Hawthorne Cottage has long since been a flagship property, offering spacious living accommodation. The Holly Tree and Cherry Tree cottages have both been fully refurbished in recent times. They now offer contemporary modern accommodation in a delightful setting at the fringes of the village. Filming for Harry Potter in Glencoe. Filming for the third Harry Potter film, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, took place on location in Glencoe in May and June 2003. Regular visitors to Clackaig Inn and Glencoe will spot a familiar-looking backdrop in the film and in subsequent Harry Potter films. During the spring of 2003, 3 sets were built near to the bottom of Clackaig Gully, and quite literally just across the road from Clackaig Inn. The sets were located so as to take in the fantastic scenery, overlooking the Torren Lochen and the Signal Rock Forest to the rugged hills of the Glen. Filming continued for a period of several weeks, and most of the stars were seen on set at some time or other during the course of the filming. Visitors to Clackaig during the early summer were quite taken aback to find Hagrid's hut, complete with pumpkin patch and smoking chimney, with the sundial and the turreted gatehouse. Whilst the bridge to nowhere sat neatly on the hillside above Clackaig, the sets have now been removed and the hillsides returned to their natural state, leaving behind little evidence of the excitement that descended upon this quiet corner of the Glen for a few weeks. Location filming is not new to Glencoe, as over many years a number of well-known and very successful films have been shot in the Glen. Some of these have featured brief scenes whilst others have involved elaborate sets and a considerable amount of filming. Films that you may well have seen include Highlander, starring Sean Connery and Christopher Lambert, Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail, Beware When Crossing the Bridge to the Lost Valley, and Rob Roy starring Liam Neeson. Although the Glencoe set has not been rebuilt, the site opposite Clackaig Inn has been used in subsequent Harry Potter films. The last time filming took place was in October 2007 for Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. The flora and fauna. The wildlife in Glencoe is limited, and probably due to the lack of natural shelter, caused by high winds and rainfall of over 90 inches per year. The weather here is unpredictable. Snow can lie on the high tops well into July, yet even some of the shortest of winter days can be surprisingly mild and bright. Some would say that it is the rapidly changing and unpredictable weather, giving Glencoe so much of its character. The fox is a regular visitor on the higher mountain slopes along with the blue hare. The wildcat, badger and pine marten stalk the lower slopes, although sightings are quite rare. The long-tailed field mouse, vole and common shrew are the type of mammals that are more likely to be encountered. Red deer and roe deer probably now constitutes the majority of sightings of four-footed wildlife seen each day. At night and during the winter months, red deer can be seen feeding and seeking shelter in the fields and on the lower moorland slopes. Bird life is certainly much more abundant, and one recent visitor is reported to have encountered more than 40 different species during a short afternoon's walk along the banks of the River Coe. The raven and the buzzard are regularly to be seen and heard soaring high overhead. Golden eagles are less common and keep to the remoter areas south of the main mountain mass, and reports of their sightings are often mistaken for those of buzzards, for it is difficult to distinguish between the two when the birds are seen at a distance. Snow bunting and ptarmigan are encountered regularly on the high peaks, and on the edge of the Rannoch Moor, there are many grouse, such as blackcock, curlew, golden plover and snipe. The numbers of wild duck and whooper swans to be seen on Loch Attriuchtan are also increasing each winter, but for the few isolated pines to be seen near Loch Attriuchtan, in common with the rest of Scotland, much of the old Caledonian forest has long disappeared, although some new stands of conifer have been planted. The only deciduous woodland of any significance lies beside the river near Glencoe Village. In consolation, one might say that they do provide a wonderful splash of colour in early autumn. The traditional moorland grasses are dominant on the lower mountain slopes, with ling and heather on the hills up to around 2,000 feet. Lower down, there is an abundance of bog myrtle and cotton grass, and in the wetter places on the sides of pools, there is bog asphodel, butterwort, sundew and bladderwort. On the high mountains and tucked away on ledges, away from the all-devouring sheep, can be found a marvelous variety of typically alpine species, such as wood anemone, sorrel, wild hyacinth, common violets, saxifrage and lady's mantle.
My heart's in the Highlands. My heart is not here. My heart's in the Highlands, chasing the deer, chasing the wild deer, and following the roe. My heart's in the Highlands, wherever I go. Farewell to the Highlands. Farewell to the North, the birthplace of valor, the country of worth. Wherever I wander, wherever I rove, the hills of the Highlands forever I love. Farewell to the mountains, high covered with snow. Farewell to the strats and green valleys below. Farewell to the forests and wild hanging woods. Farewell to the torrents and loud pouring floods. My heart's in the highlands. My heart is not here. My heart's in the highlands, chasing the deer, chasing the wild deer, and following the roe. My heart's in the highlands, wherever I go.
If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe to my channel. I hope you will come back again, as more videos will be uploaded soon. And thank you for your interest.